Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off, because today I'm going to review and page through Gran Meccanismo from Osprey Games. Will you find this game of action and intrigue in Leonardo da Vinci's Florence to be worthy of a place in your collection? Or will you find this clockpunk role-playing game to be built on nothing more than broken gears and stretched out springs? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, today I am going to review and page through Gran Meccanismo from Osprey Games. It's written by Mark Gagliotti with artwork provided by Teresa Ramos and Randy Musso. This 192-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $35, or you can grab just the PDF alone over at DriveThruRPG for $24.50. All that said, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got Gran Meccanismo. A couple of things to mention before we dive on in. First off, the fine folks over at Osprey Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's important you know that. Also, we're not going to look at each and every page, but I do want to give you a very good feel for what's in Gran Meccanismo and share my thoughts about it too. Let's jump on in. So the first thing I'll mention is the production quality is top-notch, as we come to expect now from Osprey Games. The paper stock, nice and thick. This book is going to hold up to repeated use at your game table. The artwork is solid, maybe not spectacular. It's very static for the most part, and you'll see that as we're taking a peek through, but the artwork is well done. So this is a storytelling role-playing game, which when we get into the mechanics, I'll kind of discuss that a little bit further. And it is set in an alternate history where the inventions of Leonardo da Vinci were not just sketches in a book, they have actually been built. And this has created what's known as new science. So it is a technological revolution that is taking place far earlier than the Industrial Revolution did historically. So this is not really a fantasy role-playing game because there is no magic. But then again, we do have a lot of clockpunk devices, so there is a bit of a science fiction vibe going on with this as well. So it's set in the year 1510 to start off with, which, of course, well, depending on which historian you want to listen to, is the beginning, early years of the Renaissance. And we're going to get about 70 pages devoted to this game world. So we're going to get a discussion about the various different powers in Italy, including the Republic of Florence, which is where the game takes place, or most of your adventuring will take place, as well as various different other factions that are out there. We get kind of a higher level look at the rest of Europe, France, England, Spain. And one thing that I think is pretty cool is that this technological revolution, like I said, known as New Science, is looked upon by the church, the Catholic Church, as the work of Satan. So I could easily see some really cool adventures where maybe the player characters are agents of the church spying in Florence, or maybe trying to sabotage the Gran Meccanismo. And the Gran Meccanismo is pretty interesting too, because it's really left up to the game master, or the guide as they're referred to in the game itself. It's up to them what it is. So it could be this powerful computing device which has nodes all throughout the city, or it could be some kind of like weird science. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And of course, this is Da Vinci, and Da Vinci only has one eye because an exploding invention took the other one. So there's a lot that's going to be up to the players and the guide to create in Gran Meccanismo. Nothing is really set in stone. So I found that pretty interesting as well. We do get a lot of background about travel and the technological levels of like other countries. I wish we had a lot more about the clockpunk inventions. We have some details, but we don't have like a lot of different equipment. And once again, there's a lot being left to the players and the game master in this book. Something I should also point out is this does not really tend to be historically accurate, especially with the attitude of the Florentinians. I don't know, is that what they're called? Florentinians? The people who live in Florence? Their attitude towards people who are not just your typical white church-going, Catholics. There's a lot of leeway there because of this new science, and the Republic of Florence is really focused on using this new science to build their power throughout Europe. They don't really care if someone's not a Catholic. They don't care if they're not a Christian. They don't care if they happen to be a woman. I thought that was pretty interesting, all in all, because that way you don't really have any sort of problems with, historically. Of course, this is all, like I said, an alternate history. So this is a storytelling game. So mechanically, it is not very heavy, although I want to say it's a little heavier rules-wise than most storytelling games. But it is not crunchy by any stretch of the imagination. So the player characters, as well as NPCs, have 3 attributes: body, mind, and soul. And when you're creating your characters, you're going to have 9 points that can be broken up into those 3 core attributes. And the resolution mechanic of Gran Meccanismo is based on D6. So you have a dice pool. So if you have 3 dice, that's kind of below average, on the verge of average, because on a 4 or 5, that counts as a success. On a 6, that counts as 2 successes. But the guide is going to come up with difficulty levels. So if it's something that's fairly challenging, you might need to have 6 successes. If it's something that's nigh impossible and you have to be kind of a legendary sort of character to pull it off, you might need to have 10 successes. So you're going to start off, you're going to break down those 9 points into your attributes, and then you'll also have traits. So these traits are along the lines of phrases that you can assign dice to. And I thought it was kind of interesting. There's 3 ways for you to come up with your traits. So you can have an archetype, and we have a few different archetypes in the book itself, and you can just go by that archetype as far as your various different traits and how many dice you have available to them. We also have so many traits, right? So you get 15 traits. 1 of them is 4 dice. 5 of them are 3 dice. 5 of them are 2 dice. And 4 of them are 1 die. And 1 die doesn't really do much for you. So, in fact, in a lot of ways, that those one die traits are there more for role playing than anything else. Then we also have the improvisation, where you can just pick a few traits and assign the numbers to them. And then as you're playing, as you continue through your first few adventures, then there's an emergent way of, oh, hey, you know what? I was doing this. I'm going to take this trait. That's going to be one of my traits. Now, as far as character advancement, there are quite a few different things that are available to the player characters. And one thing I thought was kind of cool is they can actually drop a trait and create a new trait. I thought that was pretty interesting. We have different goals and motivations as well, but kind of give you an idea with some of these archetypes. The Bravo, you're an entrepreneur of violence. Maybe you're just a hired thug, a bruiser from the rough part of town, or maybe you pretend to dandiest sophistication. But no matter how you choose to comport yourself, your business is menace and murder. So give you an idea, like body traits. Murderous swordsman, 2 dice. Quick with a knife, 3 dice. Swaggering bravado, 3 dice. Mind traits, knows the local back streets, 2 dice. Soul traits, relationship to patron or partner, 1D. Killer, 2D. Pretty wild, right? I thought that's very cool. This is a system that is known as Tripod, which was not created for this game. And off the top of my head, I forget exactly what Tripod means. I think it's traits relevant through dice pools, something like that. Pools of dice. So we have a lot of different archetypes, but these also give you a really good idea for your own sort of character if you're just creating someone from scratch. And we also have variations on these archetypes as well. The rabble rouser. So I thought this was pretty cool. So being a storytelling game, this is really based on acts and scenes. And combat is, at least the way the combat rules are drawn up in this core book, can be very, very dangerous. So this is not a game that's going to be relying on like a lot of combats in an adventure, because it is very easy to take enough damage to knock you out of the adventure or remove you from play, which you know what that means. So as far as combat goes, you're rolling dice, it's opposed, and whoever's going to have the most successes, and then looking at the difference between the person with the most successes and the character or NPC with fewer successes, that difference is going to determine how much damage they take. And the damage is actually done to your traits. So you'll actually come up with like, oh, well, it's 3 damage, which that's bad. You're going to come up with a 3 damage trait, a 3 die, I should say, trait towards body or mind or soul, because you can use these same very easy combat mechanics for social challenges, as well as just environmental challenges. Players have nudges. It's like a perk. It's like a Benny. You can spend a nudge to change a failure to a success, or a success into 2 successes. So we also have a lot of different kind of modular rules that you may not necessarily need to utilize. So that's something else that I do like about this, where you're just kind of plugging things in. So like goals, doubts, these are pretty important, but you don't need to use them. But they do really add to the role playing. And that's what's really important in Gran Meccanismo, is the story And the story is actually being created not only by the guide, but by the players as well. And that is normal for a storytelling focused game. So let's talk about magic and new science and how really there isn't magic, but the technology can feel like magic. Then we get into a section towards the end here, which is going to be our Game Master Guide. It's our guide, because remember the Game Masters call it guide. And I thought there were some interesting aspects to this to kind of help you along. I don't find this to be a role-playing game that I would use to introduce people to the hobby. Plus, as a guide, I think there's a bit more heavy lifting. But that tends to be the case with storytelling games because they're kind of wide open, right? A lot of the standard role-playing games, they're kind of linear with the adventures these days. You don't encounter like modern role-playing games that are very sandboxy. This can be very, very sandboxy, and this can have a lot of the actual game world being built by the players and the guide as well. Surprisingly, there is no timeline in this, which I was very, very shocked. There's no index at all. So I was really surprised by that. I do like this quite a bit. I have to point out this is probably one of the more interesting settings that we have seen from Osprey Games in a role-playing game. So we have that as well. The storytelling approach to it is probably not going to be everyone's cup of tea, especially those who like very tactical combat challenges. That is definitely not going to be the case here with Gran Meccanismo, although combat can be exciting and more along the lines of swashbuckling than, just being like, oh, okay, so I've got 3 actions I can use, and I'm doing this, and that's really not the case. Another aspect I thought was kind of cool was it's very possible to have just tons of dice that you're going to be rolling, and there are some tables in here that will allow you to kind of offload some of those die rolls. So as an example, on an average of 3 dice, you should be getting 2 successes. So you can actually use that to cut down on the sheer number of dice. Because you could have somebody rolling 13 dice for something. Whereas you have the tables where you're going to kind of offload that, where maybe they're only rolling 4 or 5 dice. So I like that too. I thought that was very cool. There's a lot of interesting little nuances to Gran Meccanismo, but there are also some issues as well. So let's swing on over to the other camera because I'm going to share some final thoughts as well as provide my review score. So all in all, I really do like Gran Meccanismo. Like I said, I think the setting is very unique. It's very different. It is clockpunk. It is not steampunk. It's obviously not cyberpunk. But it does share a few kind of vibes as those genres tend to do. I really wish there was more about the game world and the actual clockpunk creations and inventions in this book. It's kind of light on that, which I'm very, very surprised. Although, yes, I understand it. It is a storytelling game. You don't necessarily need to have every tiny aspect of some clockpunk device statted out, right? You're looking at it's got traits. It'll have some important traits to it, but you're not going to sit there and have to figure out all these different combat modifiers and things. I get that. I do. But I would have liked to have seen more about the clockpunk as well as the game world and the world of Florence specifically in Gran Meccanismo, as well as a timeline. That would have been helpful. And in Index 2. So something else I have to ding this for, and this is unfortunately something that rears its head with just about all of the Osprey Games, role-playing games, except for Jackals, because there is content that's been made for Jackals. I don't know how much support this is going to get. I mean, are we just going to get this core rulebook like we normally do, and that's it? Because that's kind of a thing with Osprey Games. So if this is supported, I would really recommend it quite a bit more than I will with the current review score. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Gran Meccanismo a 7.5 out of 10. I like it. I recommend it. I just don't know how much support we're going to see for it. Right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell. Will not only let you know when I share reviews such as this, also let you know when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Central, right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and of course, until I see you next time, here's hoping you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang. Oh, hey, you're still here. That's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.